What's up, horror fans? So, this is October 4th, and I am a few days into the Hooptober movie marathon for horror movies. Basically, there's 31, you've watched 31 movies through the month. There's a couple extras on here, and I've got another video that kind of goes over the whole process. This is through the Letterboxd website. One of the users on there comes up with the list every year, and the criteria you should meet. I mean, it's not like you're not mandatory or anything, but in the spirit of the list, you want to follow it as close as possible. And personally, I try to find movies that I've never seen before. I don't know what other people do, but I try to make my list as new as possible so that I don't have, I don't want to see the same movie over and over and over again. I do that enough through the rest of the year. The October marathon for me is all about finding new movies and new stuff. So I use the criteria that this list provides to always go look for something different and new and something that I haven't seen before. So, like I said, we're 4 days into it. I'm 5 movies in, I think, and I'm about to go watch another one here in a little bit. But at any rate, I've decided instead of I was going to do a weekly update. I think I'm going to do every 5 or 6 videos, movies, and then do an update because these might get very long and I don't want like an hour of this. So let's jump into it. The first 3 movies I have all come from this Universal Horror Classic Monster movie list, or Blu-ray set. And this is a fantastic set. If you haven't watched it yet, they've really cleaned up the movies a lot. And they look great. They sound great. I mean, you're talking about movies from the 30s and 40s, but you know, as good as they can be on Blu-ray, they are. So the first movie on the list is Dracula's Daughter, which the first 3 movies, I needed, a second movie from the series. So that's what these 3 movies are. And they all, like I said, come from this set. So the first one's Dracula's Daughter from 1936. And, the movie picks up right after Dracula ended. So Van Helsing goes and puts a stake in his heart. And then this movie picks up with him walking out the door and getting arrested because they see him killing, they see a dead body here and another dead body there. And whether he did them all or not, he's taken in for it. Eventually, someone that Dracula had turned into a vampire comes along, and that's his daughter, if you want to call her that. And she burns his body, and then some people start dying and everything. And that's kind of how the movie goes. The one thing, now that I've had time to think about it, the one thing that kind of disappoints me about the whole thing is there's not a whole lot of vampire stuff here. They do certain aspects of it, but like in the original Dracula, you'd see him turn into mist or turn into a bat or something. All you see you'd see her walk up and kind of bite somebody's neck or something. There's no real effects to it. There's no real vampire stuff other than that. I mean, if you had her shanking somebody with a knife or something, yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, the vampire stuff just wasn't enough of it. I thought it was a cool movie. I thought it was like a 3 out of 5 star movie. So that's where I got with it. The second movie I watched is Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and this is from 1943. I thought this movie was fantastic. I really love this movie a lot. You start off with, again, this one picks up right after the events of the first movie, and you get Wolfman. Some grave robbers come in and bust into his tomb and break him out, and he's got Wolfsbane in the coffin with him and everything. So they bust open the coffin, and he pops out because it's a full moon. He just murders one or both of them, I think. And so he gets out. Next thing you know, he's in an insane asylum because he's passed out, comatose or whatever. They don't know who he is. They don't know where he's from. And this takes place 4 years after the original one. And the cool thing was it had some of the original actors. Lon Chaney came back as the Wolfman, and Bela Lugosi, I think, came back as the monster. So I thought it was very cool. So you get Wolfman comes back, and he doesn't really remember a whole lot, but next thing you know, he starts telling them, hey, I do remember who I am, and this is me, this is, where I'm from and all that. So the police start looking into it, and they find out that he had actually died 4 years prior, and, they're like, oh, it's some imposter, but come to find out it was him, of course, because he's the Wolfman, and, people start dying and everything. Well, he gets sick of being immortal because he can't die, and he can't be, his wounds heal and everything. So he gets sick of that, and he gets sick of being this murderer because he's not. So he's trying to figure out how to kill himself, basically. Um, so he ends up going back to the gypsy lady he met in the first movie and talking to her, and she says, "Hey, I got an idea." She knows Dr. Frankenstein, or of Dr. Frankenstein at least. So they pack up and head off to go find him. Well, in the course of doing that, also you have to remember that the Frankenstein movie had taken place, so now the castle or whatever he was in is all burned out and everything. And so they get there and they find out Frankenstein's dead and his monster's like buried in this thing. And, you know, townspeople are like, hey, just leave it alone. But the wolf guy, he goes over there and digs around and finds the monster and digs the monster out and ends up finding out that, you know, Frankenstein's dead, but his diary's still here, and his laboratory equipment still mostly intact from the fire. All they have to do is just fix a little bit of it. So he puts in the effort to fix it, and he figures, well, if they know how to create life through the equipment, they should be able to drain the life out of him and Frankenstein, both, the monster, both. So that's kind of where the whole premise of that was. It was kind of like your original version of like Freddy vs. Jason. But the cool thing is the two monsters work together at a certain point. Like they kind of guide each other a little bit. And I love Freddy vs. Jason, but I wish that would have taken more of that tone than the, you know, like the two were competing or something, as opposed to one controlling the other. I just wish that movie was a little bit more like this movie. I thought this was pretty cool. And then the third movie I watched was called Revenge of the Creature, which is the Creature from the Black Lagoon sequel. This one was from 1955. And again, this one took place after the events of the first one. They acknowledged the events. Basically, they did a Jurassic Park, 2 or 3, where they go and get the dinosaur and bring it back to the United States. They did the same thing. Somebody goes down to wherever this was in the Amazon or South America. I can't remember where it was at exactly. But they go down there, they capture the monster, they drag him back, and of course he gets out and wreaks havoc. It was an okay movie. I love movies like Frankenfish, Jaws, stuff like that. The sea monster movies, Deep Blue Sea. I love all those kinds of movies. So this one's, you know, along those same lines, and I dug it. I thought it was pretty cool. It was an okay movie. I gave it 3 out of 5. And I guess I forgot. I gave Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman 3.5 out of 5. I really liked it a lot. And then we come up to Night of the Demon from 1957. Now, this movie I had to pick because I needed the highest rated movie I needed a movie on my wish list that was the highest rated from the 50s. And this was the movie I found. This was pretty cool. I dug this quite a bit. It was a very dramatic story, kind of. There was a lot of, I don't know, sleuthing around. The main character gets like a curse put on him, and he's got pages rip out of a book and, you know, out of his calendar. So his death date is on this date, and every calendar page after that's gone. It was a bit Final Destination-ish. If you want a comparison to something, except in this time, instead of death trying to kill them all, it was this demon that would manifest and come charging after him and kill whoever it was. You see one die in the very beginning, and then this guy gets cursed with it. And the story is really him trying to unfold how he got cursed, who did it, and why, and all this kind of thing. It was cool. I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 also. I really dug this one a lot. And yeah, it was worth it. It was very cool. It was another black and white. So that's 4 movies down in 3 days, because I watched that one yesterday, which today's the 4th if I haven't mentioned it. So last night I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I don't really feel like watching the next movie in my list. So I pulled an Audible, and you're probably going to see a few of these throughout this month, because I'll end up watching it. I'll see somebody watches something cool and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go watch that. So I'll take a break, and I've got a vacation coming up, not this week, but the next week. So I'll watch a whole bunch of stuff that week. So I'll probably end up being done with my list early, and that's fine. Or as I fill in others, I'll, you know, finish on time. But At any rate, this movie's called Scare Me, and this was one that come out this year. Now, this one I could use on my list for two things. Not only is it a this year movie, but it's also a single location movie, which I needed one later. So if I need to fill in at some point, I can use this one to fill that in nicely. Um, I enjoyed this movie in places, and I thought it sucked in other places. So the whole premise is some guy gets in a cab or an Uber and he drives out to this country location where he's rented his place for the weekend or whatever, and he's going to go write a story or something. Well, he ends up meeting some girl, he's out jogging and he meets her, and she happens to be across the street from him, and she's doing the same thing. She's a writer, staying there, all that. And it's Aya Cash that plays Stormfront from The Boys that's going on right now. So it's kind of weird seeing her without the shaved head and the suit, but at any rate, they connect up and she ends up over at his house, kind of sort of belittling him about his, he's not this great of an author, and she's like all published and everything, and she's doing everything in her power to just make him kind of feel like crap about it, the whole thing. To a degree, the cool part of it was she's eventually says, look, you need to scare me. I love being scared. Try to tell me a scary story. And that's the whole premise of the Scare Me movie. And what was actually amazing, if the beginning and the ending had been better, I think this would have been a fantastic movie. But the middle part's what really drives this. And I do recommend this movie. I thought it was good. It's just the beginning and end was kind of eh. But so they start telling stories to each other, and they'll do like faces and voices, and then they'll do their own sound effects, and they get really into it. And I believe the director's one of the actors. He's like the main actor, and then Aya Cash is on the other side. And when they get into telling their stories, they are into it, and it is fantastic. They'll even have like little, now there's sound effects put in there also, not just them mouthing sound effects, but like when they cock a weapon, you'll see them cock a shotgun, and you'll hear it, but they'll be doing the motion in the video or in the movie. And the way that whole midsection plays out is just fantastic. Them telling stories to each other is the greatest part of this whole movie. The way it ends and the way it begins is just not great. It's not bad. It's just, if the beginning kind of sucked because of him driving with the Uber driver, they could have left that out. It was some chick that's kind of like a fan or whatever, and she's, oh, I'm a writer too, and all this, and it just tear that away and just show him walking in the door, talking, meeting the girl across the street, and then going into their thing. The ending really needed to have sold this much better than it did, and I just didn't care for the way it ended. It was just kind of all right, that was it. They could have done something much better, but they didn't. And that's it. I don't really know how I would have ended. I have a few ideas on what I think should have happened, but what would have been a great ending, I don't know. But if it would have had a great ending, the beginning could be forgivable. But at any rate, so that is Scare Me. I gave that one 3 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I'd watch it again. I actually enjoyed the performances in the middle the most, and I think that's where your bang for the buck is right there. That chunk through, I don't know, 8/10 of the whole thing, or whatever, however you want to section it out. Just chop the beginning and end off. At any rate, now the last movie that I've watched so far is one called Maniac, and this is from 1963. This one actually came on this Hammer film collection, and I thought, this is a DVD. I thought this was going to be just some crappy black and white, which I don't mind black and white, but when I say a crappy black and white 60s horror movie, I mean something just garbage. You know what I mean? I thought this was going to be terrible, and it actually was pretty good. Far different than I had anticipated, especially being sold on like a DVD set like this. Again, if you can get sets like this has got what, 6 movies on it. If you can get sets like this, they're great for I bought this a few years ago too, and I think I've watched, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe 3 movies off of this now. And of course I needed a non-hammer, or I needed a hammer, a Hammer movie that wasn't Dracula. And so I have this, and I have another DVD collection over there too, which is just Hammer movies. So yeah, they produced a whole bunch, and all the good stuff you have to buy individually, but some of the crappier ones you can buy in a collection. So it worked out for me because some of them can be hard to find sometimes. At any rate, this movie's called The Maniac, and it starts off pretty brutal, man. This is from 1963. And it starts off with I think it's in France. It takes place in France, I think. And some dude sitting there stalking some little 15-year-old girl. Like, she gets off the school bus and he goes and grabs her and assaults her, you know. And some other kid sees it and goes and gets her father. Well, of course, the deed is done, but the father gets there and pops out a wrench and he starts working old boy and drags the dude back to the farmhouse and throws him in the shed and locks the door. Well, next thing you know, he's firing up a blowtorch and you just hear the guy screaming. I was like, wow, that's a pretty intense start. That was like the first 5 minutes of this movie. And the dude just blowtorching this guy to death. It was like, wow, that was pretty impressive. Then everything takes from the dark tone at the beginning, it changes over to a very light tone with some American dude showing up. And it's a few years later. And he starts talking to the daughter, and the daughter's like super hot, and she's this bartender at the bar that her and her stepmom run. And of course, the guy doesn't know that, you know, her father's this lunatic that torched somebody. But the guy apparently got arrested and thrown in the mental asylum and all this good stuff. And so anyway, American guy shows up, starts hitting on the daughter, and she's pretty attractive daughter. And the stepmom comes in and she kind of tries to put as much of a kibosh to it as she can. But next thing you know, she's hitting on old dude. And it starts becoming, it's not really a love triangle sort of, but the daughter sees it and gets mad because she's getting, you know, ditched. And the older woman's, you know, putting the moves on this guy and they're going out and doing stuff. And next thing you know, she talks him into helping her break her husband out of prison. Or out of the mental ward, and that's kind of where the story goes. There's a big section, like the movie's say under an hour and a half long, and there's probably 45 minutes or more of the movie which is just spent on this guy trying to date these two girls and the relationships between them. So there's like 5 or 10 minutes of horror at the very beginning where the guy's getting butchered, and then there's this big section of kind of a happy drama type thing, and then the ending or the end piece of it is the last 10 or 15 minutes of the whole thing, which comes around and there's a little bit of a twist in there, which I thought was pretty cool. Overall, this movie was fantastic. I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really dug it. I mean, again, it's not a great movie. None of these have been like, oh my God, these are great, but they're not garbage either. Like, I haven't watched anything I hated yet. We're going to get to that because I definitely have some 80s movies in here. But so far, so good. I have enjoyed all this, and I'm going to probably go hit up the next movie on my list, which is from the 70s, and it's a Cronenberg movie. I have never seen Rabies. I think it's Rabies? Rabbit. It's called Rabbit. And I'm looking forward to that. And now starts all the 70s and 80s and 90s movies, and this is where what I would call the good stuff's going to be, the really gory stuff. This is the part of the marathon that I love. So that's it. That's all I've got right now. And we're going to have another one in a few days, probably, as I get a few more movies watched. And that's it. We're 6 movies in, 4 days, 6 movies down. Well, 5 movies down, 4 days in. I've got an extra one if I need it. But at any rate, that's it. Take care.